Imagine standing precariously at an altitude of thousands of meters, with the wind howling in your ears. Beneath your feet is not solid ground, but a dilapidated wooden plank barely the width of your foot. No protective railings, no safety ropes, meaning that just one misstep or a sudden gust of wind, and everything would be over. Standing at that edge, would you dare to take another step? Crazy as it sounds, these death-defying paths are far from abandoned. Thousands of people still risk their lives on them every single day. Today, take a deep breath and hold it with us as we step onto 10 of the most dangerous bridges on the planet, where the line between life and death is as thin as a thread. When Iran is mentioned, many people immediately think of tense news reports on television, political confrontations, or vast arid deserts stretching to the horizon. But behind those familiar images, Iran is actually one of the oldest cradles of human civilization. A land where history has been continuously written for over 3 millennia. From the ancient Persian Empire, which once controlled a vast territory extending from Central Asia to the Mediterranean, to its ancient cities, harsh deserts, and towering mountain ranges that cut across the country, Iran has always been a place where people had to learn to survive amidst challenging natural conditions. Just looking at a map is enough to see that. To the east and center of Iran are arid plateaus and scorching deserts, where summer temperatures can exceed 50 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, the north is blocked by the Alborz mountain range, a colossal stone wall with many peaks over 4,000 meters high, creating some of the Middle East's most rugged terrain. These very mountains made connecting transportation between different regions of Iran a colossal challenge. In the early 20th century, when the country began constructing its nearly 1,400 kilometers transnational railway, engineers had to find a way to lay tracks across the deep valleys and sheer cliffs of the Alborz range. And amidst those majestic rocky mountains, a remarkable structure came into being. a slender, curved bridge spanning a dizzyingly deep canyon. Looking as if a strong gust of wind would be enough to make it disappear from the sky. That is the Veresk Bridge. Completed in 1936, the bridge spans a valley approximately 110 meters deep between two rocky slopes. The entire structure is about 112 meters long. With a large stone arch spanning 66 meters, supporting the railway tracks above. Seen from afar, the Veresk Bridge looks like a delicate curve suspended between two colossal cliff faces. A sight that is both breathtakingly beautiful and makes many hold their breath, imagining crossing it. Yet, what's astonishing is that trains weighing hundreds of tons still regularly cross this bridge every day. As a train slowly moves onto the curve of the bridge, the scene looks no different than a thin thread hanging between two giant stone walls. With a chasm so deep below that just looking down is enough to make many feel their knees suddenly weaken a bit. But if the Veresk Bridge has already made your heart pound just thinking about crossing it, then the next location will take that experience to an entirely different level. Because there, the path ahead isn't even made of steel or concrete, but just small wooden planks clinging to a sheer cliff face where every step feels like a test of one's own courage. There are bridges that make people nervous because of the deep abyss beneath their feet. But there are also places where the feeling of height begins with the thin air of a mountain summit. One such place sits on the peak of Aiguille du Midi. Part of the Mont Blanc Massif in France. At an altitude of about 3,842 meters above sea level, this site features a glass bridge and viewing area known as the Aiguille du Midi Sky Bridge, often playfully referred to as the experience of step into the void. Structurally, the bridge itself is not particularly long, but the sensation it creates can feel quite long for many visitors' hearts. When stepping onto the transparent glass area, you can look straight down into a valley more than 1,000 meters below. In that moment, it feels as if you are standing inside a glass box suspended in the sky, surrounded by white clouds, icy winds, and the snow-covered peaks of the Alps. In theory, everything is extremely safe. But the human brain sometimes works in interesting ways. When it sees the vast emptiness directly beneath your feet, it immediately sends a signal that we might want to rethink this decision. So many visitors step out with excitement, then slow down for a few seconds, almost as if their feet are negotiating with their brain about whether this was actually a good idea. Yet once they steady themselves and look out across the majestic Alps stretching to the horizon, many people realize that some bridges do more than simply help us cross a distance. They offer the feeling of standing right at the boundary between the sky and the earth. Leaving the breathtaking, precarious cliffs of Mount Hua, our next journey takes us to a place where, with just a glance, your feet will instinctively want to stay glued to the ground. That's the Hussaini Suspension Bridge, spanning the beautiful yet treacherous Hunza Valley in northern Pakistan. Erected in the 1930s to connect remote villages on both sides of the river, its spine-chilling structure makes anyone hold their breath before daring to step onto it. Stretching over 200 meters in mid-air, the bridge's walkway consists only of flimsy wooden planks, spaced terrifyingly far apart. Nestled between these deadly gaps are icy, raging waters, ready to swallow anything below. Most hauntingly, whenever someone takes a step, or even just a gust of wind sweeps through the valley, the entire steel cable system trembles violently. The bridge sways and twists like a giant out-of-control hammock. Crossing it is nothing short of a deadly balancing act, where a misstep means plunging straight into the furious river. Despite being labeled one of the most dangerous bridges on the planet, paradoxically, it's precisely its dilapidated, precarious nature that acts as a magnet for those yearning to conquer. Because when you courageously stand in the middle of the swaying bridge, taking in the majestic jagged peaks of the Pasu cones, you'll realize a profound truth. Sometimes it's in the most precarious moments, on the thinnest of lines, that we feel most intensely alive. Leaving the rickety spans over the surging Hunza River, our fourth destination will lift you off the ground and straight into the clouds. Welcome to the towering Ai-Petri peak on the Crimean Peninsula, home to one of the planet's most adventurous and spectacular suspension bridge systems. Situated at an astonishing altitude of 1,234 meters above sea level, the Ai-Petri Suspension Bridge doesn't span a typical river or valley. Instead, it precariously dangles between jagged, craggy limestone outcrops reaching straight into the sky like colossal saw teeth. To reach this vital spot, you must first endure Europe's record-breaking Miscore cable car ride. But that is just the prelude. The real challenge strikes when you step on to the sparse wooden planks of the two precarious spans suspended in mid-air. Unlike anywhere else, at Ai-Petri, beneath your feet isn't solid ground, but a sea of white clouds obscuring the 1,000-meter deep chasm. Surrounding you is an encompassing view of the vast Black Sea. But will you be calm enough to open your eyes and admire it? Even though it's equipped with a double safety harness system, when fierce winds from the ocean batter the cliffs, causing the flimsy bridge to shake violently, all concepts of safety instantly vanish from your mind. Amidst the boundless space, each step suspended in the clouds is an intense struggle against primal fear. Ai-Petri truly is a place where the boundary between a heavenly vista and profound terror is just one glance down. Leaving the jagged, cloud-shrouded rock formations of Ai-Petri Peak, our fifth destination will prove a chilling truth. Sometimes the ultimate fear doesn't come from decaying wooden planks, but from the magnificent structures created by humans themselves. This time, fasten your seatbelt and press down hard on the accelerator, because we're heading straight to southern France to confront the Millau Viaduct, the planet's grandest and tallest cable-stayed bridge. Imagine driving your car on a beautiful highway, but instead of seeing hills or houses, all that surrounds you outside the window is but dense white fog. Spanning the colossal Tarn River Valley, this 2.5 kilometers, masterpiece isn't just a traffic junction. It's a proud concrete spear piercing the sky. With its mast peaks reaching 343 meters, the Millau Viaduct even confidently stretches taller than the legendary Eiffel Tower. Conceived by the brilliant duo Norman Foster and Michel Villaud-Dieu and inaugurated in 2004, this is truly a feat defying gravity. Seven colossal pillars pierce through the cloud layer, supporting the entire ribbon of roadway suspended in mid-air. At such a terrifying height, this structure must tirelessly endure furious gusts of wind with destructive power reaching over 200 kilometers per hour, day and night. Although it was built to permanently eliminate historical traffic jams, the feeling of driving hundreds of meters above the valley floor is still an incredibly strong psychological blow. On days when thick fog completely blankets the gorge, crossing the Millau is like stepping on the gas and hurtling into the void. A magnificent masterpiece, yet also a flight on 4 wheels capable of making any seasoned driver break out in a cold sweat. After bridges that force people to cling to wooden planks, cables, or even their own courage, the world still holds another kind of challenge. Bridges that stun you simply because of their immense height. One of the most typical examples is the Beipanjiang Bridge, also known as the North Pan River Bridge. Located between China's Guizhou and Yunnan provinces. Just hearing the numbers associated with this bridge, many can already imagine its scale. The distance from the bridge deck to the river below reaches 565 meters, equivalent to the height of a roughly 200-story building. Therefore, since its opening on December 29, 2016, the Beipanjiang Bridge has become the world's highest bridge measured from the ground. The entire bridge is approximately 1,341 meters long, with a main span of 720 meters. Suspended across a deep gorge of the Beipan River. Seen from afar, the bridge looks like a giant rope stretched across the vast expanse between 2 sheer cliff faces. This project cost approximately 1 billion Chinese yuan, about $150 million to build, and is part of the Hangrui Expressway, a long route connecting Hangzhou to Ruili. Previously, traveling between Guizhou and Yunnan could take up to 5 hours, but after the bridge's completion, that time was reduced to only about 2 hours. What makes the Beipanjiang Bridge special isn't just its height record. On many days of the year, fog blankets the gorge below, submerging most of the bridge in a layer of white clouds. From afar, the bridge deck looks like a road floating in the sky, leading many to compare it to a route that travels through the clouds. And when driving across this bridge, just a quick glance down into the dizzyingly deep gorge below is enough to understand why sometimes modern transportation marvels can make humans feel so tiny in the face of nature. After bridges that span deep valleys or hang suspended between colossal cliff faces, there's a place where the height isn't just beneath your feet, but also in the very air you breathe. That's the Titlis cliff walk, located on Switzerland's majestic Mount Titlis. This bridge sits at an altitude of approximately 3,041 meters above sea level, making it Europe's highest suspension bridge. At this height, the air begins to thin. Icy mountain winds blow constantly, and almost all that surrounds you is ice, snow, and the peaks of the Alps stretching to the horizon. The Titlis cliff walk is about 100 meters, 330 feet, long and only 1 meter wide, just enough for 2 people to carefully pass each other. When stepping onto the bridge, visitors take about 150 steps. But each step brings a very different sensation, because below, are sheer cliffs and deep, vast glaciers. Walking on this bridge sometimes feels like walking on a thin rope stretched across the sky. Cold winds from the glacier blow through, the surrounding white snow reflects the sunlight, and below, colossal ice formations lie dormant for thousands of years. Interestingly, this place is open year-round. Even in summer, when many other places have turned green again, Titlis Peak remains covered in white snow. And to reach this bridge, visitors typically have to take the Titlis Rotaire rotating cable car, a journey already enough to make many feel like they are gradually leaving solid ground. When standing on the Titlis cliffwalk and looking out at the panoramic view of the Alps, many realize that some bridges don't just test one's courage. They also make you feel like you're standing on the edge of a vast, icy world. But if you thought walking on a suspension bridge amidst a glacier was the most stunning experience, then the next location will make many people look down at their feet one more time. Sometimes what makes a bridge terrifying isn't strong winds, isn't height, but simply transparency. Because when the ground beneath your feet suddenly vanishes, replaced by a layer of clear glass, your brain will immediately start asking a lot of questions. That's the experience at the Zhangjiajie Glass Bridge in Zhangjiajie, China. The bridge is approximately 430 meters long, 6 meters, 20 feet, wide, suspended over 300 meters, 984 feet, above the Grand Canyon of Zhangjiajie. Instead of concrete or steel like regular bridges, the entire bridge deck is made of 120 transparent tempered glass panels. Technically, the bridge can support over 800 people at once. But when you step out into the middle of the bridge and see the entire dizzyingly deep canyon opening up right beneath your feet, many realize that walking on this bridge is like strolling on a gigantic window suspended in the sky. That moment leaves many tourists both excited and slowing their pace a bit, as if their feet are trying to negotiate with their brain, saying, "Are we really okay?" But if a glass bridge is enough to make you hesitate, then the next location is even much simpler. No glass, no railings, just a wooden bridge so narrow that each time a car crosses, it feels like tempting fate. If many bridges scare you because of their height, then the Vitim River Bridge in Siberia, Russia, is terrifying in a different way. The sheer fragility of the bridge itself. This bridge is approximately 570 meters long, but just over 2 meters wide, barely enough for one car. There are no railings whatsoever on either side, meaning that with just a slight deviation of the steering wheel, the car could plunge straight into the icy Vitim River below. The Vitim Bridge was originally built in 1982 as a temporary railway bridge for the over 4,300 kilometers Baikal-Amur main line. However, the bridge was never officially put into operation for trains. Afterward, residents of the nearby village of Kwanda began to use it as a river crossing. After more than 30 years with almost no repairs, the bridge deck consists only of old wooden planks laid on a metal frame, many of which are rotten and have gaps. In the Siberian winter, ice and snow cover it, making the bridge surface as slippery as a wooden plank placed on a giant freezer. Therefore, each time a car crosses here, it's like a half-kilometer-long driving test. Drivers must keep their wheels perfectly aligned with the narrow planks, like driving a car on a plank, suspended over an icy river. For many local drivers, successfully crossing the entire Vitim River Bridge is sometimes considered a small, proud achievement. You may have seen the flimsiest bridges, the highest bridges, and even bridges that make people hold their breath every time they cross. But the last bridge on this list is famous for something quite different. It looks much scarier than it actually is. That is the Eshima Ohashi Bridge in Japan. The bridge is approximately 1.7 kilometers long, spanning Lake Nakaomi, connecting Matsue City, Shimane Prefecture, with Sakai Minato City, Tottori Prefecture. The structure was built from 1997 to 2004, is about 11.3 meters wide, and reaches a height of 45 meters at its highest point to allow large ships to pass underneath. Looking at the technical drawings, this is just a normal bridge with 2 lanes and a gradient of about 6.1% on the Shimane side and 5.1% on the Tottori side. Entirely within safe road limits, but when viewed from a distance, especially from a low angle, the Eshima Ohashi looks like a vertical ramp soaring straight into the sky, just like a roller coaster track. This optical illusion has made the bridge one of Japan's famous check-in spots. Many tourists come here just to experience driving up the ramp to the sky they once saw online. And perhaps that's a rather interesting conclusion to today's journey, because after all the suspension bridges over deep chasms, the plank walks clinging to cliffs, the old wooden bridges in Siberia, sometimes what scares us the most is simply how we perceive it. And so, we've just completed a rather extraordinary journey together, from bridges suspended between cliff faces, plank walks clinging to rocks, to transparent glass bridges floating over deep chasms, and ramps that look like roller coasters. Each bridge is different, but all clearly show one thing: humans always find ways to connect places that seem impossible to link. Sometimes with steel, sometimes with wood, and sometimes with just a little courage. And perhaps that's precisely what makes these bridges special. They don't just connect two shores, but also transform each journey into an unforgettable experience. What about you? Among today's 10 bridges, which one do you find the most terrifying? Please leave your thoughts in the comments section below.